Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPhone 14 Pro and compare it against the iPhone 14 Pro Max and see how this particular phone holds up in 2024, or how both these phones kind of compare in 2024. Now, the thing I would definitely tell you is that between both these devices, they were very similar in their own ways. And you have to keep in mind that these two phones, one is just the bigger model than the other one, but there sometimes are advantages of buying the more expensive one and the bigger one than buying the smaller one. And we'll talk about that throughout this whole entire video. But first things first, if you want to pick up either one of these phones, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these phones, they both came out in 2022, so that really wasn't even that long ago, like it was just like barely even 2 years ago at this point. With the iPhone 14 Pro, you were basically getting a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display on the front of that particular device. And I've always liked that particular phone. I thought it looked very good when it first came out. And both these phones were the first iPhones to actually bring that dynamic island display. So I think that in and of itself was a very, very interesting thing that was going on for these devices. I like these phones a lot from that particular perspective. And I do think that in and of itself was a very cool thing going on for these particular phones. I think the iPhone 14 Pro's display was very good. You were getting up to 2000 nits of brightness. So that was another really cool thing. And it was still a promotion display. So these displays were excellent. They were perfect. And I really liked the way these devices looked at that time. With the iPhone 14 Pro Max, you were definitely getting a much bigger 6.7-inch LTPO Super Retina XDR OLED display as well. So the technology is exactly the same. You're still getting 2000 nits of brightness, still 120 Hz. So you're really not, again, missing out on that much here either. It's basically almost the same exact thing. However, you are getting a bigger display. The resolution is also slightly higher on that, iPhone as well. But you were getting this, I would say an upgraded panel and a better panel on something like the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But you're really not going to be able to notice it. They are very, very similar. It's like not even funny. But the notch up top, or the lack of notch thereof, and the dynamic island, it's a very, very cool thing to have on both these phones. And I would definitely tell you when it comes down to it, I like both these phones from that particular perspective. And really, you're just going to be getting a way bigger phone on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Both these phones have lightning ports at the bottom. They were both also the last iPhones to bring lightning ports, which is another really interesting thing. They both have flat sides, and they're also both the last iPhones, I think, with reflective sides. All the iPhones after this with the 15s pretty much got rid of the reflective sides, but this one basically has it, which I think is very, very cool. And I think that's a very nice thing going on for this particular phone. On the back side, you're getting triple camera setups on both with a LiDAR sensor. And I do think that's another really cool thing going on for this particular iPhone as well, because you have that MagSafe capability, you have wireless charging, you have a lot of cool stuff going on for this particular phone too. And like I said before, I think that's a really, really cool thing going on for this particular iPhone. The fact that you have that type of capability and have that type of quality with these types of phones, I think is super cool and super impressive. And I do think, once again, that in and of itself is a really nice thing going on for this particular device when it comes down to it, because you're not really going to have to worry about, the build quality not holding up well or whatever the case from that perspective, because both of these phones hold up very, very well from that side. So that in and of itself is another very cool, very big thing going on for this particular phone. Now, when it comes down to the price strategy of both these, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is it's a little bit cheaper, I would say, than the iPhone 14 Pro Max. The iPhone 14 Pro right now on Amazon is like $618. The iPhone 14 Pro Max right now is like $746. So that iPhone with the 14 Pro Max is still significantly more expensive than the iPhone 14 Pro. So that's just one thing to kind of keep in mind there. Like if you're wanting the more expensive phone, if you're wanting a cheaper phone, you're going to have to kind of change your price tag a little bit, because it is going to change a little bit when you're kind of looking at those things. So keep that in mind there as well. Now from the camera side, like I said before, you're getting a triple camera setup on the backside of both of these particular phones, and they are almost identically the same type of camera. So you're getting the wide ultra-wide telephoto lens, same exact megapixel count. You're still maintaining things like 4K at 60 on the front and the back, which is still very nice. They're the same type of camera when it comes down to it. So you're not really getting an advantage over one over the other one just from that particular perspective. However, that's not to say that's a bad thing. Both these cameras are very good. These are excellent cameras and still probably some of the best cameras that you can buy. And personally for me, like if I'm going through and buying some sort of a phone, I definitely do like having these types of devices because they hold up so well from that particular perspective. I think these phones are excellent. I like the way they look. And if I'm going through and buying one of these types of phones from the camera perspective, they both do a really good job from basically everything I've ever thrown at them about. So I will tell you from that side, very good cameras. On top of that, you're still maintaining things like, like I said, 4K 60 on the front and the back, and set up all those social media applications. They do a really good job as well. I do think that's another really cool and important thing going on for this particular device when it comes down to it. So like I said before, for me personally, I like this phone a lot. And if I'm buying one device over the other one, I don't think there's a reason to. I think they're both kind of the same thing. But I would definitely tell you from the camera perspective, I think Apple did a really good job here. And still the iPhone 14 Pro's camera holds up very, very well in this day and age as well. So that kind of covers it up here for the most part too. Now, on top of that, another big thing with the iPhone 14 Pro and the iPhone 14 Pro Max is the software longevity. Both these phones are going to be lasting for a long period of time. And really neither one of these phones are going to be like being removed anytime soon. Like they're both going to be supported for many, many years to come. So I think that's another really cool thing and another big advantage for both of these devices, because you're not really going to feel like one phone is going to last way longer or way less than the other one. And like I said before, I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind. So this in and of itself is a very important thing to keep in mind. If you're wanting the longer lasting phone, like I said, I don't think one phone is going to last way longer than the other one here. They're both going to be lasting exactly the same amount of time. And that's just kind of what happens when you're getting either one of these phones. So from that side, I would say that kind of covers it up here too. From the performance side, again, very basic stuff. Both of these phones are basically giving you that Apple A16 Bionic chip inside with 6GB of RAM. So from the performance side, they are identically the same. And I will definitely tell you from this side as well, I like both of these phones from the performance side. I think once again, Apple did a really good job with the performance of both these phones. And whenever I really did anything with one of these devices, I think there wasn't really anything that I looked at and I was like, oh my goodness, this phone is like a bad performing phone, or this phone's like a tremendous performing phone from that particular perspective. Both these phones are very, very good performing phones for sure. And definitely one of my favorite things going on for this particular device. Now, on top of that, if you're getting one phone over the other one, I definitely would say that with a device like the iPhone 14 Pro Max, because of its bigger display, it might give you the impression that some of these, games and applications and whatever may be giving you a better experience. And I do think that's a very nice thing going on here. I do feel like with a bigger display, it's just kind of nicer sometimes to kind of play with content and stuff. So it gives you a bigger window of kind of messing around things. But I would say otherwise, the iPhone 14 Pro and the 14 Pro Max are very, very similar when it kind of comes down to it. So that right there, kind of just some minor stuff to keep in mind there too. Battery life wise, this is probably the biggest difference here going up to the iPhone 14 Pro Max. You were getting a significantly bigger size battery inside of the iPhone 14 Pro Max. So it kind of just makes a lot more sense to go and buy something like the iPhone 14 Pro than for something like it makes sense to buy the Pro Max than the Pro here if you're wanting the bigger size battery. But I will tell you, my standard Pro models, I've never really ran out of battery. I've had really good times with these devices, and I definitely will tell you from that perspective too, you're really not going to be missing out on that much from a battery life perspective either. Like I do feel like for the most part, you're going to be getting a very, very good performing phone with the iPhone 14 Pro still, but the Pro Max is definitely giving you better battery life for sure. So to kind of sum it up, what I'll definitely tell you, I think both these devices were very good. I liked both these phones for sure. But I don't know. I think the iPhone 14 Pro is still the one that I'd look at as probably being the better one almost every single time. I think that's the one that I'd probably look at as probably being the one that is just more comfortable to use, and probably it's cheaper, so it makes more sense, I think, for me to recommend it. The 14 Pro Max, though, is the one that probably might be better. You're getting a bigger display and better battery life. But beyond that, though, I think you're probably better off purchasing a device that, is still maybe a little bit easier to use. And that might be the 14 Pro for some people. So from that side, that kind of covers it up here. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.